All right, we're back in the house with another episode. Was this episode 8, I believe, in the Stunted Shamanism podcast series? And what a stellar past week or weekend it's been. This episode, we're going into, I guess we're going to start off with the Stargate AI announcement, the Don't Die movement with Bryan Johnson's appearance on Bill Maher's podcast. Also, saw Gladiator II twice. I bought that movie, so getting into my review of that. And then we're going to, since this is more of a conspiratorial tinged episode, we're going to get into my review, my reading of the book Mary's Mosaic, which covers the murder of one of JFK's mistresses after he was assassinated and how that all ties together. Take a look into that book because it's pretty interesting. But again, what a week. Colder than absolute fuck outside across this great land. I wanted to try to beat it, go somewhere else domestically, find somewhere else to go domestically, so that I don't have to sit inside for ages until this fucking Arctic blast or of air goes away. It's literally snowing heavily in New Orleans, though. So the options are very limited. Vegas is cold. Not that I want to go back there, but, you know, the desert is freezing. And one spot that always seems safe and warm to escape to became Escape from LA last week with the fires. So that gets crossed off the list. The Phoenix area is a possibility, but the mid-60s as a high, which is nice, but, you know, it's too expensive to fly across the country. Miami Beach ain't too bad either. But I look there and it's just clouds and rain in the forecast. So we're stuck. But there's nobody I'd rather spend it with than my imaginary audience. Even if I have people listening. Even if someone listens to this, you know, you're still imaginary to me. So yeah, just staying here. But I don't think the prices would have mattered too much had I simply bought some Trump coin this week, over the weekend. I know a lot of people are saying that, but I actually have a case of being the biggest fumbler of people who didn't buy the coin. It was Friday night. I opened my X burner account, started scrolling, and probably under 10 minutes after they launched the coin, I saw it retweeted on my feed like 5 freaking times on the For You feed. And I was like, oh, that looks retarded. And I just kept scrolling instead of just, you know, buying it. Like, all it would have taken me is just to send some of my Solana from a wallet to wherever that was initially selling from. And that Solana is stuff that I bought for under $100, so the current price is over $250. And I think at the time Trump coin launched, it was trading at like $180. So, you know, it's pumped since then. And now I know Trump coin opened at like 18 cents. And that popped to a high of, so far, which I don't think it's ever going to, but what do I know? It's gone up to $75 a couple days ago. And that was in the span of 36 hours. So I guess that was Sunday, maybe Monday, early Monday morning. 36 hours, George. It's like this. I could have been reenacting the scene from Blow with Johnny Depp. Like, I think it's safe to say you severely underestimated the market, Derek. Right on. It's going to take us more time to count the money than it did to sell it. Oh, Black Betty. God damn it, man. So what, I missed out on like a 50x minimum here, maybe 100, 200 plus. So from 18 cents to $75. If that's the max range, that's almost, what's that, like 380, 390? Math is not my strong suit. I don't have my calculator handy. I don't want to grab my phone. So it's over there. But even if I had done something small, like 3 Solana traded for Trump coin, I still would have made probably enough to pay my bills for like a year or whatever. I'm an idiot. The universe is in there screaming in my face to buy this. I logged on basically at the perfect time and still ended up buying 0 of this stupid fucking coin. Which then, you know, they launched Melania at the same time, and I think both are tanking now. Good. I hope you all lose all your money. If I can't be 50 to 100K richer off very little money, and probably a millionaire if I invested any significant amount of Solana. I always blow these easy fucking opportunities and don't do anything. I just look at it and say, oh, that's stupid, which it is stupid, but the world is stupid right now. And if the world is stupid, you have to do some things that are absolutely dumb in order to make a lot of money so you don't have to get eaten up by the machine. And the machine is coming, which is a good segue to Stargate AI that they announced, I guess, yesterday. And that name is, what are we doing here? Is it SG-1, Stargate Atlantis? I watched like 3 episodes of that show with the French overdubbing of the voices in my bid to actually become somewhat cultured and learn a new language. I'm trying to improve here, people. But I'm not sure what insights I can transfer from that gay-ass show to this new Stargate AI initiative, this new company. Are they going to use AI to reveal that the Atlanteans are indeed real? That they actually helped to thwart the reptilian invasion and keep them mostly on their moon base and in the underground caves? Too weak, too sparse of a population to actually take over against the Nordics and Atlanteans. I don't know. That's just some research that I've been doing on aliens. And by research, I mean sporadically listening to an audiobook of some of the kookiest conspiratorial alien talk that I've ever heard. Maybe I do a show on that at some point in time. But right now, I'm interested in this Stargate AI company they're building now that Trump is in office. SoftBank, OpenAI, Oracle, and something called MGX are funding it. ARM, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Oracle, and OpenAI are the technological side of things. I'm locked in on this right now, meaning any news that's broken on this project since its announcement yesterday, I've been trying to keep up on. Not that there's much. They're building data centers to increase the compute, to make their AI models increase their capabilities. Chat, is this real? Are these fucks really going for AGI? And then I guess superintelligence? Which apparently Stargate may be too late for that because the newer ChatGPT 03 is going to drop soon. Sometime in the next month or 2. Apparently. And the rumors are swirling that they've achieved some level of this. Like, old boy can actually reason its way through really complex problems now. Not just relying on data it scrapes from the internet. It can just like take what it already knows, what's already built into the model, and then figure shit out on its own. Which is crazy. And my response is, hell yeah, dude. If that gets me advanced capabilities with generating really stupid movies with O3 in a co-writer role, look out, plebs. Our production company is going to be putting out some bangers. I'll work on getting the rights to Bob Denver's likeness, just in case. Me, ChatGPT, and Claude, just scraping the most bizarre manifestations of my consciousness for entertainment value. Or are we actually about to be further corralled into this digital prison cell by the techs? Is this starting to sound more like my 2029 essay that I read on one of these episodes? More like that's coming true now. Mass surveillance, control, while everything else is also shitty and barely functional for the average person. I forget what else I wrote, as I did pen that one on under the influence of a couple of those Monster, Unleash the Beast alcoholic beverages. But I think that was the gist of it. Except so far we didn't go to war with Russia or China yet, which puts my predictive level somewhat below that of Nostradamus. I still have time. I think I said that would happen in 2026 and 2027. So get ready for what's about to happen. I don't know. Basically, AI, like the internet, unleashes a lot of positives, but it makes life more insane and unfathomable for our puny brains if you decide to be too plugged into the internet and just like social media. Fucking fried everybody. And that's just going to continue. But the positives are like, yeah, I get to create new movies. And I debuted on the last episode my use of 11 Labs, their AI voiceovers, right? Which during the interludes, the commercial breaks, the Goonie Joggins bit, and the TV announcer guy, both AI. Previously, I had to do all the voices myself, but this gives me like more capabilities. So, like on a really old episode I had a bit That 70s Show, right? And I had to do Donna's voice and then like change the pitch to make it try to sound like a woman. I just sounded like a trans woman instead. And the pitch was really bad. But now I could get like an AI voiceover woman to read her lines. And then I could try to do Bob on my own. Oh, geez, Ray. I don't have the voice anymore. Ray, if you didn't hear the bit, the whole bit was that it was an episode of That 70s Show sprinkled in on the commercial breaks of the podcast, right? And Bob had been assaulted sexually by Stephen Hyde, because the guy who played Stephen Hyde is, of course, in jail for the riggedy rape. I think I don't want to slander anybody if that's not the case, but I'm pretty sure that's what he got convicted of. So Bob, he gets assaulted by Hyde, and that was the whole plot. So I had to do the Donna voice, and he's trying to come to terms with the fact that he was assaulted, and he thinks he's gay now. So Bob starts trying to dress better and attract men, because he can't cope with the fact that he was assaulted. And let me tell you, he gets no sympathy from Red, who calls him a dumbass. God damn it, Bob. That Stephen Hyde did terrible things to me, Red. That's one of my favorite bits. Anyway, what the fuck was I talking about? Oh yeah, AI. Are we getting a new frontier of economic growth and freedom from this? Is it going to be positive, unlike the negative case I've already laid out? Are we getting a mass build out of our industrial capacity here in America? Energy expansion, and America's going into hyper gear. We're just going to fucking blow past everybody. Which, if we already have the alien tech, looks like it, pal. Looks like those, whether they're aliens or future visitors or a breakaway civilization, which has been theorized. I think I was watching a lot of Giorgiani, and I'm pretty sure that's what he says they are. That they're actually humans from the future who broke away. So look for this technological explosion to happen. We're getting all this disclosure coming too. This is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing all of this. I guess I'll read what OpenAI here says about what the hell this Stargate is all about. So we have some actual context of what this is beyond me just rambling and conspiratorial editorializing about it. Quote, as part of Stargate, Oracle and Wordia and OpenAI will closely collaborate to build and operate this computing system. This builds on a deep collaboration between OpenAI and Wordia going back to 2016, and a new partnership between OpenAI and Oracle. This also builds on the existing OpenAI partnership with Microsoft. OpenAI will continue to increase its consumption of Azure as OpenAI continues its work with Microsoft with this additional compute to train leading models and deliver great products and services. All of us look forward, to continuing to build and develop AI, and in particular AGI, for the benefit of all humanity. We believe that this new step is critical on the path and will enable creative people to figure out how to use AI to elevate humanity. Emphasis is all mine. It sounds like the goddamn HARP system, 9/11, and the Patriot Act, Project Bluebeam all rolled in one. I don't like it. I mean, the name ain't great for shutting down my conspiratorial side. Again, Operation Stargate. A Stargate's a cool idea. I like the name as like a sound. in my brain. I like the idea. I like the aesthetics of the movie and TV show. Don't get me wrong. I like the name on principle. Feels like this is going to be part of this alien reveal or breakaway civilization coming down the pike. That's what I'm getting out of this. And that's on the, of course, more wild side of potential outcomes. I'm not saying that's likely, but they came out with the egg video this week, the recovery of the craft, and some other UFO disclosure is rumored to be about to go down right now. Lots of declassification. Most likely, though, what I think is Stargate is just about increasing surveillance and whatnot as they usher in whatever further post-human vision these computer freaks have in store for us. Cyborgs, aliens, PSYOP, 15-minute cities, sodomy. But again, it raises the animal spirits of my core being, which is very conspiratorial. Conspiratorial wrapped up in a rationalist shell and then further dipped into mysticism, maybe that's the word. Shamanic. Not mysticism, but they non-material. I don't know. I can't think of the word right now because I'm an idiot. But this episode is very conspiracy leaning. As I said already, it's cold and boring month of January. And I just got to sit here and speculate and gesticulate to keep myself entertained. Now, the Stargate project has $100 billion being put into the project up front or immediately, with up to $500 billion being put into it over the course or the initial run here. Oracle is getting involved, and Micro Penis no longer has such a tight exclusivity with Open AI. I've already done N-wordia, Micro Penis. Okay, let's just go through all the names and just make them funny. So we have something to talk about for a little while here as we move through all my thoughts. So OpenAI is obviously open gay guy, just like I said. Meta AI, meta gay guy already on the past episode. Oracle, something about oral with your uncle. SoftBank. SoftBank is just a Japanese bank with a headed up by what is his name? Mashiyoshi-san, Miyagi-san, whatever his name is. It's just his bank, and he can't get his dick hard, so he pumps a bunch of money into research because Viagra doesn't even work anymore. So him and Harvey Weinstein from prison started this investment fund called SoftBank, the company, and it's just pooling money to figure out a cure to get their dicks hard. Because Viagra and Cialis don't work. No Blue Chew for those guys. See, Anthropic. They invested money into Anthropic because it was originally called Anthrobbing, and they got excited. It's like, we're all going to have an Anthrobbing. And Claude from Anthropic, their AI is, it's just a sex bot named Broad. It's just advanced cyber sex. We're bringing back the 90s here, folks. The AI revolution is just like as stupid as cyberspace. So cyber sex has just evolved when you chat with the personality bot of Broad AI. And it's just like a bunch of Indians and horny day laborers chatting with Broad all day. Instead of watching porn on their phones, they're going to have advanced cyber sex with Broad, and, the AI will eventually generate videos for them to watch. I don't know. But OpenAI, they're doing all this because they need more cloud capacity from a source outside of the confines of the house of Billy Gates. Old flabby tit Bill is running out of milk. Cue up Larry Ellison. And that guy looks fucking weird. I mean, he looks great because he's the same age as Joe Biden and whatnot. But he looks like he's the father of Tony Robbins. That's what he looks like to me. He just looks like, Dad, you're running Oracle, but do you have the passion to run Oracle? That's the question. Do you really want, do you really have the productivity? And like, Tony Robbins is his disappointing son because all he does is motivational speak and run these like supplement companies and shit. But it's pretty crazy that Larry Ellison, has been around like my entire fucking life. He's still doing all that he is at his age. But man, do those anti-aging people really always look strange? Which we'll get into a little bit with Bryan Johnson and the Never Die crowd. Don't die. Don't die. I don't want to besmirch his tagline. But that's what they harped on in this press conference. Ellison, Sam Altman, and the SoftBank guy who can't get his dick hard. They're talking about curing cancer, and the SoftBank guy said creating a golden age, which we all know means he's going to get an erection. That's the golden age for him. To me, all this seems like some sort of collusion with government, and they're selling us on the supposed super benefits of this new AI Stargate project. And Elon has been on X spiraling about how they don't actually have the money to do any of this, even though Altman says they do. You know, they were clapping back at each other. I'm not logged on, so I haven't seen what the latest development is. So I guess this part will be out of date by the time you guys hear this. The Microsoft CEO, that guy says that they actually are. They got their 80 billion all lined up. Elon, motherfucker. It's going right to Stargate. And I don't know which globalist scum to trust in this situation. Elon is such a fucking spurg. So, like, I'm on record for a long time thinking this guy is not only a weird dork, but just like I don't trust his motives. He's also very boring in interviews. I think maybe we have self-driving and the asteroid belt by Q2 later this year. This is this marijuana? Shut up, gay bitch. Fine. If I'm going to present some positives about him, I think SpaceX is a fascinating company. I'm rooting for SpaceX. Buying Twitter was good for breaking up the narrative, the total narrative control that happened on the internet over the past 15 years. Though ultimately, again, self-serving and part of the AI race for gobbling up as much information as possible. That's what he bought it for. And whatever his intention was with that Roman salute, which is funny, how fucking retarded can you be to pull that one out during Inauguration Day festivities? Like, you fucking spurg. Elon just needs to go back behind closed doors and not tweet as much about anything political or social. Just go build fucking rockets, man. Shut up. Always hopping around on stage like some excitable mongoloid. No matter what's actually going on with this new Stargate, the important thing to remember is that at their core, these people are freaks. They're freaks and carnies with PR teams. Public relations tries to make them relatable, but doesn't really succeed. I mean, Zuckerberg, he's more likable, but you know, he hasn't changed. They're all freaks and carnies, just trying to sell you on a lie so they can get more institutional capture, I guess is the word, more market share and shit like that. And I guess this is a good transition point into this other thing that I watched, which is the Bill Maher and Bryan Johnson interview on the Club Random podcast. You know, the show where absolutely nothing random ever happens. The 4 or 5 episodes that I've seen any parts of are Bill talking about exactly the same shit over and over again. Plus, he seemingly always misunderstands or derails the point that the guest was trying to make. Now, I actually watched all of this one and had to do it at 2x speed to make it through. I usually do it on high speed anyway, but this one really required the quickness to get through. Because Jesus, I've never seen such an awkward and stilted conversation. Like Bryan on one side, he's just so earnest, and people have been telling him to to go, and people have been telling him to go ahead and die for so long. And he's just got this hyper nice guy vibe. He's trying to fight his way through it. He's also just weird. And I guess he was a Mormon, so he's already steeped in all that versus the rest of American culture. And then you have Bill on the other side, which is he's just Bill Maher. Now, Bryan was on here saying that our models of reality could be as primitive as a caveman. And with super intelligence on the horizon, we need to live as long as possible to see what we actually become. This post-humanist talk of, like, if we can become information, we've essentially become immortal, is what I read in one book on post-humanism. Now, this is like some in-between stage or something. Again, we haven't released all of the new models, but we're trying to make it so we can like port ourselves from here to there, and our bodies, make sure our bodies are super healthy, and we can live well past 100 years to see what's going to happen. So then, if we can do that, like Larry Ellison was saying, AI will figure out how to make us disease-free, and then I guess we'll become some informational cyborg or other type of entity. Thus, we achieve immortality. But what the fuck is immortality in that situation? You're no longer human. You're an abomination to God. But they don't believe in God. They believe they are gods. and then we get to the episode. We have Bill Maher shilling golden nugget casino ads and mental health therapy, which really do go together. You have your gambling addiction and then right into the cure to that gambling addiction. Which I love gambling. I don't gamble much, but it's fun to me because I don't have that addictive personality. And sure, as I said before, I'd sell casino ads to anyone. Fuck you guys. I've made that abundantly clear. And I'd use the cash that I extract from that to improve the podcast and the travel aspects of the show, along with making myself wealthier. But I would do it to entertain you guys too. I would plow much more into the podcast and try to make full-length films and with the AI and go on these extravagant trips to like ancient cities and shit like that. Try to explore the Graham Hancock side of things. That sounded gay with his name Hancock, but you know what I mean, like ancient civilizations. He's just doing it to make money. Like, why? Bro, you're rich as shit. Like, why do you need to make that? You don't need a whole team to fucking run a podcast. But I guess Bill does. So, go gamble. Go to the Golden Nugget Casino and gamble because Bill Maher told you to. Use this promo code. But then, of course, you get to the part of the episode where Bill just yaps about how he only drinks and smokes a little. And he also doesn't trust medicine entirely. And all of his healthy little supplements, his healthy living, his exercises, and he kept track of all of his maladies over the years and the medications he took and logbooks, which, all smart. Very, very well. And him and Bryan were in agreement on this point. Then we get to the point about nighttime boners. And Bill Maher making jokes about him fucking the bed because he's so hard at night. He doesn't want to be that hard at night. And then he makes the joke, erectile dysfunction problems are because you don't want to fuck your wife. Because you're tired of being married. I never got married. I never had kids. Have I mentioned that before on every single podcast? I mean, the guy is fucking retarded. Just like Elon's a complete spurg. He just gets fixated on some detail. When Bryan Johnson's in there trying to make a bigger point, he's using analogies and examples, and Bill just zeroes in on some part he doesn't, or he wants to focus on stuff. Shut up. Stop going on these tangents. Bryan is trying to make a point here, and you're just steering the conversation completely different direction. They really got hung up on this trade-off between pleasure now and the follow-on consequences of later, which I tend to agree more with Bill. I'd rather have, a burger and drink occasionally than live forever. Yeah, don't do those things all the time. Don't have sugar and sweets and drink and eat like shit all the time. Do it every once in a while. Go out, sleep. I sleep my 8 hours. I work out. I go for long walks. I keep my brain engaged. I have the willingness to survive because I have the will to live a happy life. because I'm excited and curious about the world around me. Even when things aren't going well, I still want to go through. But Bryan, in this interview, he's really hung up on the consequences. There's this desire for pleasure, Bryan, and it's not a total virtue that comes with never giving into it. Getting tipsy is fun. Being high sometimes, like Bill Maher says, it's fun. I don't smoke anymore. I never smoked that much. I don't do edibles anymore. I haven't done them in 3 or 4 years. That's what I did more of than ever smoking weed, but yeah, it's fun sometimes. Eating a ton of food is fucking fun. But the limitations of life is what makes it. It's like Achilles says in the movie Troy. I don't remember if he says this in the Iliad, but Brad Pitt's character says the gods envy us because we are immortal. And that's true. It's not, the gods are immortal. They go on forever. The point of life is the limitation of it. The joy you get from having a treat, an occasional pleasurable experience, a high that you can't explain, a DMT trip, whether it's weed, sex, some great food, a great dinner, a drink with family, friends, all that shit. Because those moments are fleeting, because they are scarce, that is what gives life its substance. That's what it's all about. That's what everyone enjoys. And you have this fucking live forever guy who's not denying that. I'm not saying that, but he's denying himself that in order to become some sort of science experiments. But the one part that freaks me out was he was talking about how he's testing all the food from around the world to see what's what. And he was talking about all the heavy metal content in there, which sucks. So I guess I'm full of heavy fucking metals. Another point of this was that we can't get over our primitive selves to curb these base desires we have in order to actually have the opportunity to go longer. And sure, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of indulging in shit. Again, the key is limitations. Both limitations on indulging in your base desires, but also the limitations of life itself. You're not meant to exist forever. And again, I don't necessarily buy into, I really don't generally buy into this post-humanist world where we're going to transfer our fucking intelligence into some machine or whatever. Yeah, AI may take over and increase our lifespan and maybe some other shit will happen, but why would you want to be a fucking cyborg? Why would you want to be a stream of pure consciousness? To do what? Even if there are like aliens that are coming here from another planet and they're not just sending drones, like the gray aliens aren't just drones from some other place. If they're actually biological life forms, like what do those motherfuckers do then, huh? What's so fucking great about their lives? Go ask a fucking alien who's been traveling all over the galaxy. What do you fucking do all day? How long is your lifespan? Do you live forever? Huh? To do what? You don't have, most of you don't even like enjoy sex. The Greys don't. I know that. I know the Greys they don't enjoy sex according to all the abductees. They're just kind of drones. Do other aliens have any pleasures? What is the point of your life? Why do you exist? Why does any of this exist then? You fuckers. AI's coming for you. Aliens, 9/11, Bryan Johnson. Don't die in the Stargate. So I just had to buy Gladiator II on Prime when it came out. Spent $25, so definitely a high-risk maneuver on my part. And it's high risk on the high likelihood that it stunk. Or, of course, I had been excited to see it when the trailer came out, just based on the fact that it was Gladiator. Just based on that fact alone. But the more I thought about it, the more it seemed like I shouldn't expect too much going in. And I definitely did temper my expectations going into it. I didn't read any reviews, but the idea that there was a second film in this franchise, it became a franchise series, didn't make any sense to me when I sat and thought about it for 5 seconds. So my plan for the first time through watching Gladiator II was to approach this film as if I was having a dream. You know it's going to be clunky and kind of stupid, But eventually, you wake up, recognize it as a fun enough time, and then completely forget about it. I did watch this movie twice on separate weeks and ended up liking it more than I thought I would. Though I will get to the problems here, and believe me, there are plenty of them. I know now that a lot of people hated this movie. My question to you is, what did you think a sequel to this movie was going to be? The original was a completely self-contained story. It's a story of revenge, propelled by great performances by Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix. The ancient Roman history aspect and the aesthetic of it all was just a container and window dressing for this pretty basic story. But the story itself still had plenty of weight, a sense of the epic, and the characters all had development and an actual reason for doing the things that they did. The fact that it took them 24 years to make a sequel is testament to the fact that the story had been told in its entirety. And the fact that they made a sequel based off of that was even this good is pretty remarkable. Now, these guys were out here picking up cigarette butts and still managed to make if anything, a highly watchable 2.5 hour long film. Now, they could have done something completely different, but it wouldn't have been Gladiator. I wish they had, but they needed to use the franchise name in order to get some of that sweet box office cash. Something else with this same level of cinematography and fight scenes, but taking an actual risk with the storytelling would have been great. Instead of rehashing a good portion of the original, that could have been an awesome film. And some people, even if they did that, even if they took risks, some people will still complain that it wasn't as good as the original, the first one. Fine. That's the way it's going to be. So, we start off meeting Hanno, the main character, working his land. He has a wife. She seems pretty forgettable, like an NPC wife. She's attractive enough, but forgettable enough face and not really much of a presence. And with that, you just know she's going to die early on. There's no real reason for her to be there. She doesn't have the presence. The character, she's on her way out immediately. And this is all taking place in Numidia. It's early on. We get the first battle scene. The Roman ships are approaching the city. And early on in this Numidia scene, I was pretty pumped to see the guy from Spartacus. The Spartacus TV series was on here. I forget his character's, what's the actor's name? Pops Mensabonsu? I don't know. I was glad to see him, but he doesn't stick around too long either. Watching Gladiator II for the second time, I can't find much fault with very much of anything in the first 27 minutes of it. Yeah, having no connection to his wife, that character, and then seeing her die really didn't have much of an impact. But I liked the fight scene, the battle. I guess you can also talk about some unrealistic shit or whatever, but it's not a documentary. You want historical accuracy, go read a book. Ridley Scott is not going to give it to you. Aside from that, I like the opening battle, everything else. Even though, at this point, Ridley Scott and the screenwriters are already tipping their hand as to what's going to happen in the film. I say the first 27 minutes are fine with me, and that's right up till we get to the first gladiator contest with the apes. The CGI apes. And that shit looks ridiculous. I cannot defend it. I think it sounds like an interesting idea. I hate the CGI apes. This just reminds me of when I tried to watch Planet of the Apes, that last film that came out. I couldn't do it. It's too weird, especially when they're talking. I don't like it. Here, it just looks really bad. Again, the idea, interesting enough. Just have them fight other guys. You don't need a CGI ape to make it exciting. It'll work if you have some cool practical effects, a good fight sequence, choreography, and all that. But this kind of just, right there is where you start to get taken out of the movie. This stupid-looking ape who's all aggressive and then gets scared. And he gets bitten by Hanno. I also think at this point is where you really get stuck within the confines of the first film. Lots of stuff starts popping up to where it's too hard. It's trying way too hard to remind you of the first Gladiator. Which I do think they did way too much fan service, way too much referencing. If they got rid of some of that and had a more distinct villain in this film, I think it might have worked better. I still kind of liked it. It wasn't great. It's a watchable film. It's probably not going to be one that I revisit too often. Again, 2.5 hours. The first villain starts off and you're like, oh, it's the general. He's going to be the guy where that Hanno's going to go after. But then it goes, no, he's cool. He's married to, and he goes from being a target of rage to sort of just being a, hey, I'm your stepdad. I'm looking out for you sort of thing. I thought Acacius was a boring character. Then the next villains are like, okay, maybe the emperors are going to be the bad guys. And as characters, I don't think they're that bad. They just don't have any real development. They're not like Commodus in the first one. Commodus, you're like, oh, yeah, I get he's the villain here. But the emperors here aren't really. I mean, they're shitty people, but they're not villains. They just seem to be there so that Denzel's character can have someone to easily manipulate and push them out of the way so he can take power. Beyond that, there's not too much to him. And then towards the last third of the film, we get Denzel finally revealing himself in his plan and his true nature. If he's the villain, then our final fight, which we get at the end, is between Lucius and his 70-something-year-old man competitor, played by Denzel Washington. What is the outcome of that fight going to be? You know he's going to lose. You know he's not going to kill Lucius, a.k.a. Hanno, from earlier in the film. We find out that his identity is Lucius Verus, named after my father. There doesn't seem to be a real villain in this film, or is really saying that Rome itself is the true villain. It's a real banality of evil situation where the dream of Rome is just a myth. I mean, to really fix it, they could have just not reused so much of the first one's plot. Sure, they tried to mask it somewhat, but there's so many familiar beats here. It's like, just let the damn movie stand on its own at some point. Stop rehashing the same fucking thing. You're trying to rearrange a puzzle piece and then adding more puzzle pieces that don't fit and expecting it to come out the same way the first time around. But, oh, it's slightly different. No, it's not going to work because you eliminated all the reasons that the first one worked. I can see what you're going for, but it doesn't stand on its own. And of course, if you're making a sequel, and the one massive weakness here is that the main character died. The main character fulfilled the plot. You have to replace him, and it's not going to work. Maximus was the center of that universe. You could have told that story in any time period. It would have worked just as well. You could have made it a sci-fi film. If you still had the same characters, the same Maximus and Commodus rivalry and shit, and him trying to get revenge, it would have worked. He was a fully developed character, Maximus, and Russell Crowe was perfect as that character. Now, in this one, it doesn't feel authentic with Lucius. It just doesn't. I'm not sure if it's entirely Paul Mescal's fault. He doesn't have that same vibe as Maximus, but of course, the movie keeps flashing back and giving you the same reminders. It gives you flashbacks to the first film. It's trying to give him that same arc that Maximus had. There's not much here as to why any of these random gladiators would want to follow him and die for him on his behalf. Why? The first one made sense. It was believable that they would follow the general and rally around him. Here it's just like, of course they're going to follow him, because that's what the script requires to happen at times. They need people to follow Lucius, but it's not earned. It's just like, oh, this follows because we need it to happen. I don't know. Maybe it is Paul Mescal's fault, though. I feel like at times he was trying to ape Russell Crowe too much. Pun intended with that CGI ape. I don't know. You don't have to play the same character. You can make him a different type of character. Someone who's charismatic in a different way. It doesn't have to be the same sort of disposition as Maximus. You can have a great lead character, a great hero. It doesn't have to be a mimicry. This film, especially once you start getting towards the middle and the end, it feels rudderless. I don't ever develop any attachment to the characters here. Although I do enjoy Denzel as Macrinus, I think he's really the only interesting character in the film. Just be glad that out of this entire movie, he was allowed to have a separate story that wasn't copied from the first one. But you know they probably brought in Denzel and were thinking about having him do some of his famous lines from other movies so he wouldn't feel left out of all the reminiscing. And so that they could pad it with even less original content. But when you fired Commodus because he had HIV, You broke the law. Officer Lucius, there's my son. Protect him. I don't know. This whole thing feels like a story without a worthy hero. Again, a distinct enough main villain. Yeah, the emperors are bad guys, but they're pathetic. Pedro Pascal's character was set up to be the villain, but it turns out he's not actually a bad guy. Then I guess at the end, has to fall on Denzel, which is fine. He has his own desire for revenge, and he's a self-serving guy. Though by that point in the film, I already like him as a character. He's my favorite character at that point. I'm not rooting against him, and I don't care about Lucius. Lucius did nothing to really get me on his side. I don't care if he saves Rome. That's about the only thing he's got going for him. Maybe the Empire and what it does to people, and the Cretans who run the show are villains of sorts. Okay, cool. But none of this has the impact that it needs to have in a revenge type of setup. But what did I like here? I liked the sharks in the water. I know logically a stupid idea. And again, the CGI didn't look great. But as a random bit of entertainment, I actually loved that scene. They didn't look as bad as the apes, and they got hidden behind the water, sort of. So it wasn't as bad. I think the rhino was the best of the animals. The rhino, then the sharks, and the apes were terrible. I did like the fact that they had a sea battle in the arena. That's cool. I like that part. The ending itself of the movie, stupid. Again, Macronus just gets killed by Lucius. It was never going to be a good fight between a young guy and a man in his 70s. Then his speech to the two armies at the end, it's not inspiring. It falls completely flat. The first time that I watched this movie, I just let it wash over me. Didn't think about it and just kind of enjoyed the spectacles. The second time, I watched with a more critical eye, and I started to see all of those many flaws you guys have pointed out. And yes, my enjoyment was diminished quite a bit. It's fine. I still think it has some beautiful shots, but it can't ever fully come together as a standalone film because they took too much from the old one. I'm probably still higher on it than a lot of people are. I started looking up reviews afterwards, after the second time, and it looks like there's a large faction of people who absolutely hate Gladiator II. I am still going to get into part 2 of the book Dreamtime later in this episode, but I wanted first to talk about something more conspiratorial. Let's get more on the conspiratorial side of things in this episode. It's been a while since I've talked about aliens, CIA plots and whatnot. And boy, do we have an alleged CIA plot for you today with the book Mary's Mosaic, which I listened to the audiobook, so I don't have detailed notes here. It's more of an outline of what I could jot down, not quotes and whatnot, but it's fine because we just need to know the narrative of the story, how it is part of the more famous conspiracy that we all know. This book has to do with the murder of Mary Pinchot Meyer, the former wife of a CIA agent and the mistress of JFK. One of them, because you know that boy had a lot going on. Busy social life. I have to say that personally, I'm pretty much done with reading any JFK assassination books. I'm not only tired of the topic itself, but also all these books, they sound believable with how they present things, and they all have overlapping evidence that you get presented time and time again. But they all draw wildly different conclusions as to what happened. Frankly, it has just become an endless rabbit hole of information and characters. And if you want to go down that, you will never, ever get to the end of it. Something happened, but I don't really care enough at this point to read hundreds or even thousands of more pages on the topic. It's it becomes such a time sink. And not that I've read a book on it in 3 or 4 years at least, but if you start wading into that topic, it just takes up all your time. And listen to me when I say that we all have something better to spend our time on than that. Something happened, probably something pretty nefarious, but at this point, oh my God, dude. In this book, Mary's Mosaic, being connected to, but not directly about the JFK assassination, was a good one to just listen to on audiobook without getting bored. I could get through it quick. I do also still have the book on James Forrestal, that case too, which preceded the JFK situation, but seems very connected. But I really doubt that I'm ever going to get to that one, though, unless I do it for a future episode of this. But as far as reading for pleasure, no. Anyway, let's learn a little bit about Mary Pinchot and how she fits into this whole grand narrative, this grand drama. So Mary Pinchot comes from a family of very politically active and connected people. Gifford Pinchot is a name you might be familiar with, and he was once governor of Pennsylvania a long time ago, but you probably, if you've heard of him, more as a naturalist and one of the people responsible for like national forest and shit like that. And Mary's mother, she was a journalist, a early feminist of that time period, writing for magazines like The Nation, also socialist political connections there. Her dad, also another progressive socialist type involvement. He had involvement in the ACLU and just progressive politics in general. Now, the thing about Mary, you keep hearing during this book is how beautiful she was. She was very intelligent, and everyone says she was such a charming woman. By all accounts, all of this is true. She was also very much an idealist, hence growing up in the progressive socialist milieu, I guess you would call it. And her big thing was world peace, particularly after the horrors of the Second World War. So what's interesting about this is I also listened to a book about Margaret Mead and other books about LSD and psychedelic use and CIA connections. Mary, coincidentally, maybe, was doing LSD and mushrooms back in the 1950s, part of a group made up of what you would call vanguard artists, people who are seeking greater self-expression, as they put it. And Mary always had this conflict going on, according to her friends and everybody else. She was conflicted between seeking what she actually wanted from her life and the path that society had set out for women during that time period, but particularly women of her social class. She was expected to be a hostess, giving parties and shit like that for all these other people. But it's hard just to be a wife alone and not have any pursuits that you're interested in when you're actually intelligent and functional person. But before the 1950 psychedelic use, she actually met John F. Kennedy during college. They didn't attend the same college, obviously, and nothing apparently at this time happened between them in terms of a relationship. JFK was just at that campus, running through a bunch of her classmates. And one funny story, I thought it was funny. This guy lied to one of the women that went to the college, saying that he had terminal leukemia in order to get laid. Goddamn, that guy never fucking stopped. I'm dying. The leukemia, it's bad. You better give me some pussy, otherwise, I might die a virgin. I don't have a JFK impression, but that's the gist of it. Who cares? So Mary, she's not involved with JFK during this time period, really. She knows him socially. Obviously, the upper crust runs a lot in the same circles. She ends up marrying a guy named Cord Meyer. Now, Cord was a brilliant man who served in the military during the war and suffered, severe injuries in the process. He was really badly injured in combat. Initially, he became known as a writer. He wrote about short stories and essays and whatnot about his war experiences and other topics. And people were like, "Oh, this guy's got such a bright future. He's going straight to the top." He was held up as a young man with a bright future and one of the magazines at the time. And in the pictorial spread of it, he was put right next to JFK. So they were both already in the 1940s being held up as future leaders, future important people, which would track with their social status and the fact that they were both competent and really intelligent guys by everything I've read about them. Now, Mary, at this time, she loves Cord because he, in this period of time, is also an idealist just like her. He also is completely obsessed and enamored with the idea of world peace, especially after he gets out of the war. He becomes involved in pushing some of the post-war ideas on a world government. I'm pretty sure this is one of the things that leads to helping to set up the UN. He's involved in that. He's still a very young guy, but he gets some work and some jobs, and he is pretty much globalist supreme, wanting a one world government. Then, of course, there's the OSS, which becomes the CIA, and Cord is recruited to the CIA by Alan Dulles, who is a character of some renown. And by some renown, I mean he's in every freaking book about every conspiracy during this time period ever. Obviously, CIA guy, head honcho there. And Cord, he has beef with JFK. He never liked him. And when they were both presented as the young leaders of the future, I think it was because later, after all that, JFK initially started trying to put moves on Mary. Now, apparently they didn't consummate their affair yet, and she was loyal to Cord, but Cord was like, just did not like the fact that JFK was, trying to get with his wife and everybody else's wife. But Cord is involved in a lot of very successful CIA operations, including Radio Free America and Operation Mockingbird. So it's easy to see he's turning from this idealist who wants world peace, and he's getting involved in the more nefarious, maybe less pleasant, but sometimes necessary operations, secret operations of the American government. Whether you think Operation Mockingbird was a good thing, I don't. Obviously, that was the one where the journalists were basically CIA parrots. Radio Free America, I don't know. I haven't looked into that. But Cord, as he gets dragged more into the CIA life, he becomes more distant from Mary. He can't talk about work. She becomes unhappy as she had been previously. Very much a sounding board, someone he would bounce ideas off of, and an equal in their marriage, like intellectually. And they would have these long discussions, and they were very intellectually stimulating for one another. That was part of, according to the stories, what their marriage was about. But, he's off on these missions or setting up various operations for the CIA and becoming more distant. And Mary, of course, doesn't like this. Not only because he's gone all the time and she has to raise the kids by herself and do all that, but she had become just another housewife of a CIA officer and had to do all the usual hosting duties for the wives and the CIA officers at parties and stuff like that. But of course, she is completely opposed to the mission of the CIA in general. She's always at the parties, these parties she has to host. She's always making fun of the CIA. She criticized it, and she hated Alan Dulles. Supposedly, one of the things that ultimately may have led to her demise is the fact that she possibly could have known about things like MK Ultra and some other secret dealings of the CIA that Cord might have disclosed to her in conversation. Mary becomes increasingly unsatisfied as the years go on. She goes to Europe and begins to have an affair, first time with an Italian noble, and this leads to the divorce between Mary and Cord. And Cord, again, he went from this idealist, this brilliant guy with a bright future, gets involved in the CIA, and now he's still in the CIA, but he's just this alcoholic and angry guy, according to this book. He's lost that idealism, and he's just another company man. And Mary's relationship with the Italian count goes on for some time, I think. But eventually, JFK comes back into the picture, and they still run in the same social circles. And during the late 50s, JFK's become a senator. He's going to eventually run for president in 1960. Eventually, Mary let some woman who was working as a secretary for Kennedy stay at her house. But Mary was away during this time. Naturally, Mr. Kennedy was banging the secretary, and he paid a visit to Mary Pinchot's house. And the neighbors caught on, and like I think the woman, the wife or the husband, snapped a picture, and his retort is, how dare you take my picture?" And then from that point, shit was on. Shit really went on, and that lady tried to expose Kennedy and say he's unfit for office. Tried to get attention in the newspaper and stop him from being president. But of course, when you're that well connected and they want you to win, the media basically just ignores anything you have to say until the problem goes away. Even though she has a picture of him leaving someone else's house while his secretary's staying there in the middle of the night, and he looks like he just fucked her probably. But Mary, she gets caught up in this sort of because it's her house, but she didn't need anything from JFK. She was confident. She was rich, and that's why Kennedy really liked her and her ability to have intelligent conversations with him. He was always attracted to her, but their affair didn't start or wasn't fully consummated until 1959. So Kennedy, he wins the election in 1960. They're still carrying on their affair. Kennedy, how many affairs does this guy have at this point during this time in his presidency? I don't know. But Mary is still pursuing the psychedelic angle that she started back in the 50s. And she wants to learn, even though she had taken psychedelics during the 50s, she wants to learn how to run an LSD session from Timothy Leary. And this is 1962, so Kennedy's already in office, and she says she wants to learn how to run it for, quote, a very important man. So apparently she wants to do psychedelics with JFK. She has firsthand experience with the psychedelic drugs, obviously, and she knows that they're being used for intelligence, like the CIA, for their own ends. She may not know the name MK Ultra, but she has a basic idea of what's going on there. Now, she wants to learn these sessions so that these powerful men in Washington can take LSD and have their minds change. And she wants to learn how to run these sessions so she could not only expose President Kennedy to it, but also the other powerful men in Washington can start taking LSD and have their minds changed about how they approach the world, maybe in pursuit of her goal of world peace. And she thinks that their minds can only be changed by women. The influence of women and doing LSD in a group session among women that they either are fucking or trying to fuck will help change their mind, which honestly not a bad strategy. In this meeting between her and Leary probably did happen, but there are some people who seemingly doubt that Timothy Leary ever actually met Mary. But he recounts it, and there seems to be documentation in his journals about this woman. So Mary isn't just another woman that President Kennedy is fucking. Obviously she is, but their relationship goes beyond that. She was in the Oval Office at times. She starts appearing at security meetings. And according to people, they were in love by the time he had become president. So as you get further along and she's trying to turn him on to LSD, their relationship is getting pretty close. And we're not really sure if Kennedy actually ever gets to do LSD. It appears he got to smoke weed, and maybe he got plenty of reports about what LSD and the psychedelic experience was like, but it doesn't appear likely that Mary actually got to set up the whole experience. Maybe she did, but we don't know. But it's interesting at this time, their affair is becoming more public. People have already been whispering about it, right? There's Phil Graham. He's the owner of the Washington Post. And Phil, at some sort of roundtable meeting or gathering in Phoenix, Arizona, starts spilling the beans about the affair between Mary Pinchot and JFK. But again, nobody in the media is allowed to pick up that story. Everybody ignores it. But it's become this wild rumor. Everybody knows that they're having an affair and that it's causing problems. Phil Graham, he later commits suicide, but the author suggests that there may have potentially been some foul play involved. There were conflicting stories about what happened, and an employee at his house said something about the body being moved, supposedly. Now, why would he have been murdered? Not only for exposing the affair between Mary, Pinchot, and JFK. That's one thing. But he also knows a lot. Operation Mockingbird is in full effect. He's the owner of the Washington Post. And he allegedly had also been talking about Project Mockingbird to people. So not just the affair. And the story is that he had some kind of mental breakdown and started turning against Project Mockingbird and the CIA's involvement in the media and disseminating news. And his wife at the time, Catherine Graham. Now, Catherine Graham later became Warren Buffett's girlfriend. Or close friend or whatever. I don't know if they ever came out and said they were boyfriend and girlfriend, but she's tied up with one of the wealthiest men in the world later. And that's just like a side note. Catherine Graham and Warren Buffett becoming involved later on. I do always find it interesting how all these people just have all these connections to one another. I know people run in the same circles, but how many fucking connections can you have to CIA operations and whatnot and other people and being married and involved in these families before it's like, oh, there's one big game going on here, ain't there? Anyway, from the time of Phil Graham's suicide, Timothy Leary says that he receives a phone call from Mary and that she went to go see him at his offices. And she tells Leary about the time someone's wife snitched on her LSD sessions that she was trying to... Remember, she was trying to get powerful people like JFK and other guys to take LSD so that she could try to change the world or whatever her plan was. Just get them to see differently so they're not doing these psychotic fucking things. And now, because of that, her trying to pull that off, she says she was now in real trouble, according to Leary. This was the last time that he would see Mary Pinchot alive. And he believed that it was actually Catherine Graham was one of the wives who had snitched on Mary for trying to put together these LSD sessions. Leary suggests that Catherine Graham may have been a part of Mary's group of 8. She had a group of 8 people that she was doing LSD sessions with. And this is through her connection to Claire Booth Luce, whose husband owns Time magazine, I think. And they had been running articles about psychedelics, and she had also had experiences with psychedelics. And Claire Booth Luce would also later become ambassador to Italy and a congresswoman, just by chance. All these people, man. But Booth Luce, let's just call her Claire because I'm tired of saying her last name. She said it had saved her marriage to her husband, the guy who owned Time magazine. So the story is that Catherine Graham, looking to save her own marriage to Phil before he killed himself, she may have sought out Mary's group in order to take LSD and try to save her marriage. But that is the last time that Mary saw Leary in person. After JFK is killed in November of 1963, he says that Mary called him on December 1st. And according to him, she sounded like she had been drugged and that she was distraught and scared that they were coming after her. Now we get to the new year. Mary, it's 1964. Her house is repeatedly broken into throughout 1964. Repeatedly broken into. They're not taking anything. Someone is apparently ransacking it, looking for something specific. And also, her house was bugged, allegedly. Later, it's alleged that it was under the orders of James Jesus Angleton. Possibly as early as 1961, her house was bugged by him. But she pretty much, I don't know what evidence there is, I don't remember. But by 1964, it's pretty much like, yeah, they're bugging me, they're ransacking my house, they're looking for her diary. Her diary where she, details her affairs with JFK and probably details her knowledge of CIA operations. So then after her house has been broken into, she's been bugged and all this, Mary Pinchot gets murdered. I know, it's a crazy coincidence, guys. You're going to have to just believe that it was a natural occurrence. It was just a robbery gone wrong. She was shot twice on a footpath in a park in Washington, D.C., that Washington, D.C. area. Apparently, there's also a struggle, and she's dragged down from a slope after she's hit by the first shot. Then the guy shoots her again. Now, the alleged criminal is a guy named Ray Crump. He's accused of committing the crime, but there is also a lack of evidence in a lot of ways that, Ray Crump did anything. Though he did lie when he was questioned and say that he had been fishing. Yet when they examined everything, there were no hair or fibers from Mary Pinchot on him, and there were no hair or other fibers or any sort of blood or anything. No blood stain on his clothing. There was no physical evidence on her linking her to Ray Crump. Though if there was no blood stain, he had been found in the river. But there was also no evidence of gunpowder on his clothes or person, which would not have washed away immediately, according to the expert witnesses. And they also said that he was a taller man, I think 5'9" or something, 185, when the eyewitnesses described him. But in actuality, the guy was a short king. Ray Crump was 5'3", 130 pounds. The one witness is a mechanic, and he was sent to fix a broken down Rambler on the side of the road. Yet, when later investigations, there was never any actual order found or record of this Rambler car anywhere. Nobody knows who put in the call for him to go fix this Rambler. So it seems like if there was an alleged conspiracy, he was sent there to be an eyewitness, to give eyewitness testimony to the guy they were framing, in this case, the patsy, in this case, Ray Crump. And this witness, the mechanic, he's a black man who also had a military past. Ray Crump is also a black guy, so they wanted to make sure, allegedly, they wanted to make sure that they had a black guy saying that another black guy did it, because then you can't be accused of racism, right? The second witness is a guy named William L. Mitchell. That's his name, this character, let's call him, who William Mitchell is supposedly a professor of mathematics at Georgetown, as well as having some type of work for the Department of Defense, and his address was listed at an apartment building that was also known to be a CIA safe house. And there was no further record of his existence after 1968. The guy just disappeared from public record. Once he moved out of that building, no one ever knows what happened to him again. This William Mitchell, the author of the book, obviously finds the real identity of this William Mitchell character. But again, he disappears in 1968. No forwarding address, no any sort of information otherwise. Who knows? Now, Ray Crump, when he gets arrested, he's confused as to what's going on. He can't really remember. He said that he had a fight with his wife, and then he met up with a girlfriend in the park, and they had sex, and he fell asleep after having sex, and he'd been drinking, and I guess the girl left, his girlfriend. And this girlfriend does exist. She didn't testify at the trial. She didn't want to because she didn't want her husband to find out, but they confirmed that he actually did have a mistress that he had been seeing, and she said, yeah, we had sex in the park. Now, according to Ray Crump, he slipped, he fell into the water, and he was kind of drunk, and he's trying to get out of the river that runs through there, and he hears something like a car backfiring, and suddenly there's all these police around. So he hears a gunshot, and suddenly, the police are there on him, and he gets arrested. The case goes to trial. Ray Crump is found not guilty. There's no gun that's ever found. The case is never, quote, solved. And Crump, while he's acquitted of this crime, he does later have a history of violent crimes like assault with a deadly weapon. And he had threatened 2 of his later girlfriends and things like that. So maybe he actually did this killing of Mary Pinchot Meyer. That's a possibility with his behavioral history, but it doesn't really seem that way. So Mary Pinchot, she's been killed. And this is after her house has been broken into. and people are looking for the diary. Immediately after she dies, there seems to be a concerted conspiracy to get a hold of her diary, and it's apparently given to James Jesus Angleton, or he just took it himself, because apparently he was there while other people showed up to her house after the murder, and they kind of like ran into each other like, whoa, what are you doing here? But there's also a secondary book that's presented as the diary. It's really her art sketchbook, and it has pictures in there and some vague notes about what's going on in her life, but it's not the detailed diary that people really want. This is the real one. This is more substantial, and there are conflicting stories about who found it, how it was found, and Mary's supposed instructions about what was to happen in the event of her death, and it kind of disappears. It becomes this mythical thing that someone has somewhere. But the case is over. No one knows who killed her. But remember that William L. Mitchell guy, the second witness? Yeah, so basically all of the patterns suggest that he was intelligence, obviously. In the author of this book, Mary's Mosaic, he was in contact with another guy who wrote a book about MK Ultra. And that author said that one of his sources had also lived in that apartment building that had been a CIA safe house. And he said, that source said that Mitchell had been, in fact, the one who had killed Mary. So he wasn't a witness to the crime, he was the perpetrator himself. And the person known as William L. Mitchell, whatever his actual name is, he eventually speaks to another author who had been working on a book named Leo D'Amour. I think that book was never released, or it got axed or something happened with that. But anyway, in his interviews with Leo D'Amour, he tells him that he had been in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force at different times, and also he had worked for the FBI, and that he was in fact the gunman that had killed Mary, and the whole setup was spearheaded by James Jesus Angleton, and that Ray Crump, the guy they tried to pin it on, was indeed a patsy. Now, Mitchell, in his interview, says that the affair that Mary had with JFK was not really the problem. It was that with her CIA connections through her marriage to Cord and her disgust for what happened with the JFK assassination, after she had become obsessed with the case in that brief time period from 1963 and through 1964 before she's murdered. She's researching it, and she's not willing to shut up about what she's finding out. She has CIA connections. She's getting a lot of information that other people might not have, and she's writing about it, and she wants to expose everything, and she already hates the agency. So that is why she's killed. Not because she's having an affair, but because she's going to potentially expose the role of the CIA in the assassination. And again, this is 1964. This is before the Zapruder film and all that shit, before all the conspiracy really, really gets going. This is when they have a tight lid on everything, and they're trying to keep the lone gunman, non-conspiratorial angle to the story going. And he was shot, and that's all that happened. There was no involvement by anyone else. William L. Mitchell had been one of the two witnesses to this crime, right? But they weren't the only people in the park at the time. William Mitchell had been the only witness to see a runner who was in the park running in Bermuda shorts, who was on the path running where Mary was eventually murdered. And both he, the runner, and a man and a woman who were called a couple, supposedly dating, but they were actually, according to William Mitchell, all three of those people were spotters to make sure the operation went down smoothly. And weirdly, neither one of these, either the man and the woman or the guy who was running in the park, none of them were ever found or came forward as witnesses, despite the fact how much insane coverage that murder got. So it seems like it was an operation. And apparently it was so well planned that they had used a stand-in to look as much like Ray Crump as possible, which would explain why the mechanic guy who said he witnessed the aftermath of the murder, saw him standing over Mary's body. That's why he said that the man he saw was probably like 5'8" or 5'9" when, Ray Crump is like 5'3". Apparently, these assassination teams, the CIA or whoever, just have a gaggle of people that can be dressed up like that at any time. There's enough time in the park where they saw Ray Crump asleep and, could get someone in there who looked like him enough and dressed like him enough to make it seem like he was the murderer. But, Ray Crump was let off, found not guilty. I don't know. That part of the story didn't really make too much sense to me. Like back in the 1960s, they found a store, they found a guy, a black guy that worked for the agency that's or was like a FBI agent or something that could dress up and help cover up this murder. I don't know who could actually be a stand-in, a lookalike for Ray Crump. That was the part I really didn't get, but okay, maybe that's true. Though they apparently had 2 hours to set this whole thing up, and they also set up the broken down Rambler on the bridge so that the mechanic could be set up as a witness to what's going down. And also, it's like, but how did they know if Ray Crump's mistress was there too? Right? They had been having sex in the park. She had been present, but she left apparently after he passed out because after having sex and getting drunk. Like what? How did they know she wasn't going to be around? Like if she's the third witness, or if she's with Ray Crump, it's not going to be believable that he murdered Mary Pinchot Meyer running by. The whole plan would seem to have to go off without a hitch, including things like that, which you can't really plan for. The reason this book got made is because the author knew Mary Pinchot Meyer personally. His dad had some involvement. His dad was a CIA officer, I think, and he was best friends with Mary's son, who had been killed in a car accident a few years before this. So it was always a case for him that had a personal dynamic. He knew Mary and wanted to get to the bottom of it. And that is my presentation on Mary's Mosaic, the potential assassination, the potential plot of Mary Pinchot Meyer, trying to cover up for the fact that the CIA's involvement in the Kennedy assassination. According to this, I don't know what to buy. It seems plausible. Again, I'm not trying to get into JFK assassination stories anymore, but I thought this one was interesting.